we have had this, this huge global stock market reaction to Trump's tariffs last week, falling value of equities all around the world, like a very, very big global negative event. And Keir Starmer has said that Britain is not going to retaliate. We're not going to rush in, put tariffs up, but he clearly feels he's got to say something else to support our car industry and industry more widely who are being clobbered by these tariffs.
Yeah, he looks weak, not retaliating, when the European Union and other countries have. He looks weak. He hopes he's going to get some type of new deal. Well, let's see what it's like. And if you're dealing with Trump, one, it'll probably be a bad deal for you, and two, Trump may not stick to it. But the stuff he's doing on the car industry, I think he's right to do it. Some of it was coming down the road anyway. For instance, manufacturers, if they don't hit their quota of electric vehicles, are fined. It's £15,000 per vehicle. And these were inherited from the last government, and you could see they were going to reduce those. I think they go down to 12,000. The other changes sound quite sensible. Will they fundamentally shift and undo what Trump has inflicted? No, I don't think they will.
We have to remember we're starting at an advantage in the sense that we are getting a 10% tariffs on most goods if you go beyond steel and cars. 10% compared to the European Union's 20%. So we're already at an advantage.
The Brexit dividend.
The Brexit dividend. I heard the cabinet, the chief secretary yesterday saying it is a Brexit dividend.
If we'd been in the European Union,
we'd be paying 20%.
Would be getting double.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
Although it's not been negotiated, it's just based upon their formula.
Yeah, we're being treated like Guatemala.
And because the president hates the European Union, always has done. So I think we've got to proceed with careful. We jump into tariffs straight away because he'll come back afterwards with even bigger tariffs.
Look, the European Union and leaving it is the elephant in the room. We try to reset the British economy because people are about £2,000 worse off as a result of leaving. Trade intensity.
All these figures, Maguire.
A 15% hit. Yeah. It's going to be 4 to 5% of GDP. Leaving the European Union was a self-inflicted harm greater than what is being inflicted by Trump.
It sticks in his throat. No. This is a Brexit premium. Period.
You wrecked the economy.
Sticks in your throat.
You wrecked the economy.
Problem is, though, if you are, the British car industry... Massive tariffs now, more than twice the 10%. Jaguar has said they've had to suspend their exports. It's a huge export market for us. What Keir Starmer is saying today is he's going to change the transition for electric, for the production of some vans and cars from 2030 to 25 years, 5 years away. I mean, it has no impact right now on the car industry suffering this tariff hit. Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders say greater action will almost certainly be needed. Don't get the feeling from their statement they think this action is going to make much difference now.
Do you remember at the end of the last Labour government and there was the global financial collapse, we lost institutions here as well as around the world. There was a big car scrappage scheme then to help the motor industry. Peter Mandelson, who's now the ambassador in Washington, was the business secretary, I think he was called then. And you kind of got a discount if you took your old car in, off a new car. That was really big and ambitious. This is more tinkering.
Yeah,
it was probably going to happen anyway, actually.
But it doesn't make it more competitive to sell. That we sell a lot of cars into the United States. A Jaguar Land Rover. Aston Martin, Jaguar Land Rover already halted their exports.
Although Aston Martin is one of these the tinkering on the rules, isn't it? Luxury. So because Aston Martin and McLaren will be allowed to keep producing petrol cars beyond the 2030 date. Hybrid cars, Toyota Prius, Nissan e-Power, things like that, will still be allowed to be sold new until 2035. But it is strange, isn't it? Because on the one hand, Keir Starmer has been saying, look, the world order has changed. Forget about it. This isn't a phase. This is a new era, which is obviously radical and unsettling and changing everything. And yet his response is very, very small fry. His response isn't radical. So if those assumptions about the world order have to change, shouldn't we be removing all our assumptions about what we should be doing? We're talking to Ed Davey later. He wants to be more combative with the Americans.
Well, it's interesting. Of our leaders, he is the most robust.
Yes.
Without a doubt. You haven't heard very much from Nigel Farage. Of course, there's a very good friendship
with Donald
Trump.
From him?
Because he's embarrassed, isn't it? He's made great play of his supposed friendship with Donald Trump and how he was pally and he loved Britain, and now he's clobbering Britain in so many different ways. So you go quiet because you can now see...
To be fair to him, I mean, Kemi Badenoch, Keir Starmer and Nigel Farage are all taking the softly approach on this. It's only really Ed Davey at the moment who is doing what, you know, the kind of rhetoric we're seeing from some other countries.
Yeah, you could see why Starmer does what he does, because he's also got to get over the line the Chagos deal on the future of the base there.
Why does he have to get that over the line? Just abandon it?
No, he's got to get that over the line. He also doesn't want to disrupt his efforts to try and get Trump back into line on Ukraine. And then you've got the economy too. I can see why the Prime Minister does what he does, but Britain feels weak.
But he also doesn't know. But he also doesn't know what Trump is going to do.
That's right.
Trump might not know what Trump's going to do.
And Trump last night was flying back to Washington, went down and did a chat on the plane, and apparently he got kind of... Apparently, he got rather testy with a journalist who asked him about, you know, what's going on with these falling equity markets. Because for Donald Trump, that was always historically the test. The stock market goes up, I'm succeeding. Suddenly, the stock market is collapsing. You know, what does he say?
He lives and dies by the stock market. That's what he's all about, and it's going down. It's given a big negative on it.
Yeah, and
he's turning out this second time around to be the Liz Truss of the USA.
Yeah, America's biggest bank, JP Morgan, says there's a 60% chance of a global recession.
I think, and the thing is, what the British Prime Minister can do here is pretty limited, because, and that's why I think he's still hoping for a trade deal with the United States. He's still talking about Trump coming over here in the summer. I read at the weekend, possibly getting him in front of the King twice. Deploying soft power. I was a bit
confused at the weekend. We had this big front page in the newspapers. Keir Starmer, the era of globalisation is over. Globalisation is finished.
Right.
Oh, but by the way, we're trying to negotiate a trade deal with the Americans, and Rachel Reeves wants to negotiate a trade deal with India. And you think, so what is this ending of globalisation? I mean, it may be America is deciding to shut itself off from the rest of the world. But is the rest of the world going to stop trading?
There's quite a big globe around the rest of it, and what we're going to have to do is do a lot more trade with the rest of the world.
No, we do more trade with the European Union than we do with the USA. The USA is our single national biggest trading partner, but we do more with the EU as a whole. Globalisation's changed, but we've had shock after shock. We're living in an era of shocks. You had the great financial collapse of 2000 and 2008. We've had COVID. We've had Putin's invasion. Look, we've now got Trump. We had Brexit in Britain, which was self-inflicted, and it's going to keep coming. You've got to adapt all the time. But the British economy has been too open. We've been too reliant. We've sold our basic industries, whether you're power production or water or whatever you want to look at, we've allowed them to be sold abroad. We should be run in the national interest, owned and run in Britain by Britain.
But if you... So, Keir Starmer says the era of globalisation is over. Donald Trump says, I am going to have tariffs and protection to get jobs back to America. Brexit means we can make our own choices. Is the British government going to say, well, look, if Trump can use tariffs to protect industries in America, why isn't Britain doing the same to protect those industries?
Yeah, but they were sales.
I mean, we can now, can't we? We don't have to do it with the EU. We can do it on our own. Why aren't we following what the Americans are doing?
When we were in the EU, you could do all sorts still. You could have protected shipbuilding. You could have protected steelmaking, but we often opted not to because we went down a route of just saying, let the market take the hindmost. Let the devil do its work. Let basic industries, infrastructure, just be sold off. You'd have to have a real big change of mindset. Trump could trigger it, but I see no signs from Keir Starmer he's going to have a rethink of his economic
Should that be part of the Brexit dividend?
Of course, why not? There's 27 countries in the European Union now going to have to try and decide their response to what Trump's doing. We can have a much
But should we be doing what Trump is doing and protecting our industries?
Well, of course, that's the job of the Prime Minister. And
with tariffs and trade barriers, with our independent trade policy?
Why don't we cut our tariffs? Cut our tariffs.
Well, that's the opposite of what Trump's doing.
No, but cut our tariffs.
And we went the other way.
Make it more attractive.
Look, we came out of the single market and the customs union, which
cut our tariffs.
Which exporters will tell you have created mayhem in terms of red tape
tariffs
and selling.
Do you think we should be going the way of the Canadians? Mark Carney, the new leader there, has posted a video encouraging countrymen in Canada to buy Canadian wherever you can. This idea of boycotting, essentially boycotting and shunning US-made goods. I mean, on an individual basis, you know, you're waking up this morning, talk about tariffs, you talk about the steel industry. You feel helpless. You don't know. You're held hostage to all of these big things that are happening around you. What can you do? I mean, should you be taking a political stance as an individual, and should we be encouraging people to buy Britain only, buy British only?
Canada's in a different position. We've got Trump saying he wants to make it the 51st state.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost to occupy it, certainly economically, and Carney's trying to win an election. So, of course, he's going to do this.
But it's interesting.
And he's fighting a very good election.
But Australia just called their election. Few weeks' time. The Australians sound more like Ed Davey than Keir Starmer or Kemi Badenoch. The Australians are, like Carney, saying, let's take the fight to Trump.
Well, I think you have to do that if you're in an election campaign, don't you? You've got to look tough.
But Trump is unpopular in most
Starmer's got a bit more time.
He's unpopular. There's a Trump cult in the UK, which is small on the hard and far right, that'll back him. But he's unpopular. And if you're in Australia, you're in Canada. Canada, Trump has destroyed the Conservative Party. The Conservative Party looked as if it was heading for power and the Liberals were going to be out. Now the Liberals, with Mark Carney, the former governor of the Bank of England, look like they're going to win. But I think that if somebody's bullying you and somebody's hitting you with a big stick and somebody's threatening your jobs, you've got to retaliate. Trump's big problem isn't going to be what we do. It's what's going to happen in the US, because he puts tariffs on goods coming from China. Well, it's often American manufacturers like Apple make their iPhones in China and then take them into the US. If they make them in the US, they're going to cost a lot more and people won't be able to afford them. That's going to be the truth.
Big bullies, you have to be careful with big bullies. They're a lot bigger than us, America. Huge, they're giant. So that's why I think we've got to be much more strategic.
So these are two different approaches. Kevin Maguire is going to fight the bully, and Andrew Pearce is going to buy
I think we'd be a bit more cunning, long game, and I think
so you support Keir Starmer's approach, do you?
I think we should not be rushing into sanctions straight away, to tariffs straight away. Yeah, I do. And I think where we can, I think we should be cutting our tariffs.
What's terrible for businesses, of course, and they've been shouting about this for a long time, but it is coming into force, is the employers' national insurance hike is coming in. And that is obviously...
The timing couldn't be worse.
The timing could not be worse.
Although in other ways...
We're fiddling around with £3,000 off a car to transition for a car, but we're whacking every employer, small or large, with a massive increase in their national insurance. Massive increase.
But another way,
lowering the threshold.
You say the time
and minimum wage is going up at the same time.
The timing could be worse. If you're Keir Starmer, we're talking about cars and we're talking about Trump and tariffs. Now we're talking about national insurance. If Trump hadn't have come along, we'd have been talking about national insurance at the beginning. Whatever the impact of that national insurance rise, remember the money, well, some of it goes to fill the black hole, but some of it goes into the NHS, so there is a plus side for Britain from it. But nevertheless, the impact will be lost in a way with what's happening with Trump. Just as COVID was a smokescreen for Brexit.
No, Kevin, good try, but there's a survey in the papers today showing that we're losing a job every 9 minutes.
Well, the care sector particularly.
Hundreds of thousands of jobs are going to go. I was talking to somebody who runs a very good charity on Saturday. They employ 60 people. They're having to get rid of staff. They can't afford to pay the extra national insurance.
Well, care homes...
How could we think that hospices are going to have to close beds because of the rise in national insurance? They didn't think this through.
Deal.
They didn't think it through, the government, the Chancellor, when this was done. I just don't think they thought, will this impact charities? Will it impact hospices? It does, and it is, and it's hurting them hard.
Well, they're taking... the government to court, care homes are taking Rachel to court over the national insurance rise, because they're saying it's going to actually risk a collapse in the care sector. I mean, the care sector has been so decimated.
Battered.
And the people who work in it feel so undervalued. And now they can't afford to... I mean, the problem with it is, of course, is that those private providers will start... Well, we're not making any profit.
Close.
You know, like you get in dentistry, like you get in all these other places where people who are providing public service through private means, they're not making enough of a profit. What's in it for them? They might as well go off and do something else.
Yeah, they'll pull out, and that's the trouble. charities, hospices, care homes. It's a big worry and no sense in the Treasury and Number 10 that they
this
get
is a problem
the
for
damage.
Labour government, isn't it? You know, Trump hits the car industry with tariffs, green rules relaxed to protect UK car industry.
Yeah.
Government hits the care sector with national insurance hospitals.
And does nothing.
And it doesn't. It looks like it's a double standard. How do they deal with that?
Yeah, it's very difficult because there is a negative side, but the care homes have not been good payers. They've not been particularly good employers, as we found out with COVID, just having staff going around everywhere, spreading infections. There's been a huge corporate takeover, private equity companies getting big chains, which have just been milking the people who go in it. There'll be people watching now thinking, what, the rates you charge me or my mother, my father, my grandmother, my grandfather, and you can't make a profit? Come on, I'm not buying that.
Kevin, the NHS in March 2020 was moving large numbers of people with COVID from NHS wards into
testing.
care homes.
Yep.
That wasn't the care homes' fault. The care homes were being asked to do it.
No.
They were being paid to do it.
Where the care...
But it wasn't their fault at all. It was hard-working care workers, staff, who were doing that without any of the protections and the equipment the NHS have. So I think dumping on the care workers for that is a bit unfair.
No, I'm not dumping on care workers. Care homes.
Yeah,
but he also found out that
small businesses.
The employment practices of care homes is they had a lot of agency staff who were going from care home to care home. So if they had an infection, they were taking it round.
Well, Kevin,
so there was a problem on how
Can
the
we
care
talk about
is run.
And the problem from today is his lot have whacked every care home, every charity, every hospice with a huge increase in their national insurance bill, a huge increase which will impact directly on care and service they provide.
Every NHS patient will benefit.
A Labour government have done it.
Everyone in Britain will benefit from a better NHS.
When they close the hospices, Kevin, and when they close down the little charities, and when the care homes say, sorry, we can't afford it because of what the government's done, repeat that. Repeat it.
But there is big money going into the NHS. Isn't some of that going to care homes?
Some of it will. I'm sure it will. It'll be filtered through, but we don't know.
Isn't a lot of it going into wages?
I think nowhere near enough.
We don't know quite where the 25 billion will. So all you hear is the negatives, and you don't see the positives.
Should we talk about one of the positives potentially for the NHS? Is the front of the Daily Telegraph this morning, door-to-door NHS to tackle the health crisis. This is Wes Streeting's big idea. It comes from a scheme that was working out in Brazil. There's a doctor from Imperial College London called Dr. Matthew Harris who worked as a GP in Brazil. And this is where it's proven to work and credited with cutting deaths from heart conditions and all of those sort of things that can creep up on people as they're living their lives, as opposed to being acute emergency moments. This idea is that you have an army of health workers who will go around to what Wes Streeting calls the frequent flyers, the people who tend to keep coming back and back and back into A&E, into the health service with recurring problems. You go and knock on their doors at least once a month and you talk to them directly in their homes and you provide care there. It feels like going back to the days which I loved it. When I was growing up, our family doctors, we had Dr. Lee and then we had Dr. Coker, and they were marvellous with my mum. With all of us as a family, they would come and visit us at home. And there is something in it. I think there really is.
Yeah, as long as... Have they got the care workers to do it?
Let's assume they have.
Right.
We've got to assume
because there's a shortage of qualified and
yes, but community care,
it sounds terrific.
I think is something that is...
vacancies in the NHS.
Yes.
What's he doing, though? I mean, is this about saying, knock on the door, are you ill, why don't you get some treatment? Or is he knocking on the door and saying, why aren't you at work?
Yeah. Well, it's both, isn't it? It's both. It is.
There's a tough edge to it as well, doesn't it?
Is it the nanny state? I mean, there's a quote here that some critics say it's the nanny state on steroids.
I mean, it's so boring to hear the nanny state.
Yes.
It just...
I think
when you
people
hear
want
that,
to be cared for, whether it's in their home, whether it's in A&E. They certainly don't want to be, as we're going to hear from Unison, being looked after in a car park.
No.
And they don't want to be being looked after in a corridor. So anything to avoid that, I think, might be helpful.
Yeah, and they don't want to have to put up with a 45 or 3-hour wait on the to get through to the GP at 8 o'clock in the morning.
You get community health visitors now.
Yeah.
There's not enough of them.
No.
But you get community health visitors. If you had a baby, you'll get visits after hospital. I think extending it is a good idea, but it's not just putting extra money into the NHS, which is a good idea. But Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, is really England, isn't it? That's Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland. It's devolved. But it's all about shifting what we all have to take more responsibility for our own health. So don't get obese, don't exercise more, don't smoke.
Yes.
Cut back on the drinking. You want to use technology better where you can, and then you want to put care in the community.
Yeah, and this isn't just... It's not been plucked from thin air. They have been running it as a pilot in Westminster, and they said it's had a dramatic impact. A 10% drop in hospital admissions over a year, including a 7% fall for those arriving in A&E. That, if you extend it across the country, they're going to do it in 25 areas. I think it's pretty significant.
If somebody comes and knocks on my door, are they going to say, why don't you go to hospital? I mean, what is it which is stopping the admissions? Is it saying do preventive?
Yes.
I suspect, and I don't know the study, but it's not going to be cold calling. You're not going to be in the shower, hear a ring on your bell and have to run down, and it's somebody, hello, I'm your local NHS. Have you got any ingrown toenails I can sort or anything? They're going to, I think they'll target people who are known to have poor health or being flagged by a GP, and then you try and deal with it that way.
Yeah, it's going to the 10 or 20% most deprived area.
Maybe they'll look in their fridge and see what food they're eating.
Although
we're eating all terrible processed food.
Today's the first day of the Unison conference in Liverpool. Right. We're actually kind of doing an interview with Sharon Bandesha at 8:15. They are highlighting there's been a huge rise in NHS staff being intimidated by angry patients filming them and then posting the films on social media. I kind of wonder if you get a knock on the door, there's a health visitor saying, I think you're obese, you might whip your camera out.
I mean, it is right.
Why are they filming them and they're objecting? What's the problem with that?
Because I think that they haven't got the treatment they wanted, or something's gone wrong, and therefore they get the camera out and then say, I'm going to film you and...
make you famous. I'm going to make you famous. I'm going to post.
I've got a mate who's a painter and decorator in a local authority.
That's a surprise. Kev McGuire's got a mate.
And some houses, council houses, social housing, when you go around to paint them, you've got to take police protection. What? I mean, look, there are just people. I mean, look, filming a health visitor or something and then threatening them. You don't know the mental condition of the person. Are they stressed? But I mean, it's kind of awful, isn't it? And if you're working in that service and you've got to put up with this, it's pretty grim.
Shall we talk about the British painter who says that she's now struggling to recover her business after that? You remember the portrait of Donald Trump?
Yes, he looked fat.
Well, yes. Should we just take a look?
Possibly the vainest man in the world.
Yes.
If you're painting his portrait, you might as well paint a nice one.
Unbelievable.
Okay.
Yes.
He's not going to forgive her for it. It's in Chicago.
No, he said, although he's now 70, he said maybe she's lost her talent as she got older.
He looks like he's going to get a knock on the door from a health visitor.
Yeah.
Oh, I hope they don't.
Too many poor pies.
And Donald Trump said, the one of Obama was wonderful. The one of me was the worst I've ever seen.
I suspect there are worse ones, actually. But I think he's got a point. It's horrible. It's terrible.
But he's not a good-looking lad in any way.
But we know he's a big fan of the King, our King, who's off to Italy this week, and our own monarch has had a few issues with paintings himself. Do you remember the red portrait? There it is.
Yeah. I went to see this the other day. I think it's wonderful. I think it's beautiful.
Can you imagine Donald Trump getting that one done?
It's incredibly striking, but the lights have to be bright, otherwise it's too dark. You can't really see anything.
But the days when portrait artists are just like doing the equivalent of a photograph, which is what it was back in the day.
You're to interpret, aren't you?
Yeah, although they normally took out your warts and your carbuncles and everything. It's kind of... It's creating an image of you, something with greater depth.
The poor painter, she says that her business has been detrimentally impacted. And she said, I purposefully distorted the portrait. Oh, no, hang on. Donald Trump said that she had purposefully distorted the portrait.
Paranoia. That's just paranoia.
Yeah, I feel a bit sorry for her, actually. I hope people don't...
She painted what she saw.
Well, I would just like to say, I would like to say to her, and actually, more importantly, to both of you, thank you. Oh. Thank you for what you do.
Kevin's face. He's like, it sounds like you're being let off the show.
For your service. And actually, to everybody in the studio here, a big thank you to...
Are we all about to be fired?
To everyone. No.
I want abuse
of your own paper, the Daily Mail.
It must be true, then.
Gen Z, the younger generation, they've given up saying thank you.
Well, that's rude.
They don't like it.
Well, they don't mind saying cheers. They'd rather send an emoji afterwards.
Oh, isn't that nice?
They don't mind, I owe you one. But apparently, thank you
What's wrong with the word thank you?
It's out.
It's not.
But it's
polite.
not. They feel uncomfortable saying it.
Well,
they feel uncomfortable saying thank you.
Well, rather
it can't be true, can it?
But we don't.
Rather than I owe you one, which then places an obligation
Please
on
and thank you, common courtesy.
I just want to say, to Sophie in my ear.
Our Gen Z.
To Stuart, our
editor this
director,
morning,
to all of our viewers.
To all of the crew here, who are younger than us, thank you.
all.
Thank you, all of you, for what you
everyone.
do.
Tar.
And don't
As
bother with
Gordon
an
Brown
emoji.
would say, thanks for all you do.
Yeah. And we don't want an emoji.
Hey, what's wrong with it?
Thanks for your service.
Yeah, thanks, a tar, cheers.
It's
That's
fine.
all right, isn't it? That's...
What's uncomfortable about it? I don't understand.
I don't know.
What's the discomfort?
Is it? Well,
Yeah, but look at Andrew.
Old-fashioned, dear.
Thank you.
Lovely.
thank you.
He looks so uncomfortable.
No, I would always say thank you and please. Very well mannered, unlike Kevin.
You
Clark.
are very...
A grieving daughter is pushing to change NHS policy after the tragic loss of her mother to a misdiagnosed cancer.
Chloe Hickman's mum, Louise, died 5 years after doctors had ruled a tumour on her ovary was benign.
The government says recent investment into the NHS has provided earlier diagnosis for 80,000 cancer patients, but hoping to avoid any more unnecessary loss of life, Chloe is calling to make it mandatory for all benign results to be double-checked by another specialist.
And Chloe joins us now. Very good morning to you. I mean, absolutely devastating for you to lose your mum, as it would be for absolutely anybody. But for when did you find out? What was the gap between, obviously, that first appointment? Presumably she had some symptoms, did she?
Yes.
Was she stomach aches and things like that, was it, at the time?
Yeah, so it was
2019?
quite normal symptoms, so stomach aches, not feeling well, not eating, not really a massive cause for concern. They're quite common symptoms. And obviously she was advised in January 2019 that there was no sort of follow-up needed because things were benign. Those symptoms continued into April 2022, more severe, I would say. She was losing a lot of weight, so we were very concerned. She had the surgery to remove the mass. She had follow-up chemotherapy. She was given the all clear, so we were sort of OK again. And then, obviously, fast forward to March of last year, when it came back, and obviously there was a big link and there was nothing more they could do.
So just to be clear, when she had the chemotherapy in 2021, was it? When
22.
22. At that point, did you know that the previous benign, and I'm using quotation marks there because it obviously turned out not to be, the benign mass, the benign tumour was the same source of this cancer? Or did they say, actually, that was benign and this is something completely separate?
Yeah, exactly. So they sectioned the two. They said there was no direct link. It was a completely different diagnosis.
Almost like a coincidence. Like, she had a benign one, but now she's got the real thing.
Yes.
Sadly. Right.
And then it turns out, in fact, they think that the tumour was the original 2019 tumour, which they mistakenly thought was benign. You're saying now that when you get a benign verdict on a tumour, that you should always ask and that you should always get a second opinion. Is that because you're saying in 2019 you think that the particular consultant or the expert got it wrong, they should have seen it and they missed it? Or is it just really hard to tell these things and therefore a second opinion could be helpful?
I definitely think a little bit of both. I think as much as can be done to prevent something like this should be done, whether that's through AI technology. I've obviously heard about the recent news with that, or a second opinion from a consultant. Because
in your conversations with the hospital about your mum's care, have they said to you, has anybody ever kind of admitted that a mistake was made, as opposed to, they clearly missed it, but should they have seen it?
Yeah, so there's two conclusions of the report we received as family. One is a investigating officer, which is quite separate from the hospital, and one is a clinical opinion. The clinical opinion says a mistake was made, and as a result of that, there is significant harm. The investigating officer is more of a, this shouldn't have happened, but we followed X, Y, Z, and we'll learn from it in the future.
And at the time, I'm assuming then your mum didn't think about asking for a second opinion, because you actually anybody can ask for a second opinion when you're getting healthcare in the NHS, and the hospital doesn't actually have to give you a second opinion, but generally speaking, they've got no reason not to. They'd want to put your mind at rest.
If the verdict's benign,
yes,
you think, thank goodness. I mean, why do you want a second opinion?
Yes.
Definitely. I don't think there's a need for a second opinion in your mind when you're assured everything's fine.
And it wasn't.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And just to, I mean, I suppose, you know, ovarian cancer, a friend of mine passed away from it. She's only in her early 50s, and it is called the silent killer because the symptoms for women can seem almost, because women's bodies go through so much in their lifetime, in their life cycle, it can seem, as you said, the symptoms can seem not normal, but like backache, bloating stomach, needing to wee a bit more. Like, all of that stuff is just annoying, but you don't necessarily think it's serious. Presumably, part of what you're saying is see the symptoms, and when you go to the hospital, ask for a second opinion. I mean, you've got to take it super seriously.
Definitely, yeah.
This all happened, 2019, the first look at the tumour, benign. 2021, 2022, of course, the pandemic happens in that period. How much do you think the huge stress of the NHS at that time meant that, you know, it was harder to get follow-up appointments or to get the kind of focus you needed?
I definitely think it plays a part. In the report, it mentions of workload of the oncologists at the time, and the numbers compared to previous years are very, very high. So I do think it has something to do with it.
Yeah.
We asked the NHS for a statement, and the interim chief medical officer for the NHS service, which runs Ipswich Hospital, says he understands Louisa's family still have concerns and teams continue to support them, adding that lessons learned from Louisa's care and treatment will be used to improve processes and services. And a Department of Health and Social Care spokesman says it's a shocking case, acknowledging that accurate cancer diagnosis is crucial. Doctors must respect a patient's right to seek a second opinion.
What was your mum like?
The strongest woman I know. Hands down. Very brave. You wouldn't know what silent battles she was facing. She was strong for me and my brother. Obviously, my brother's younger than me. But yeah, bravest woman. And if I can be as a 1% as brave as her, I'll be fine.
Well, being here is a big thing.
Did she know that you were going to kind of take up this cause on behalf of other people?
Yeah, so obviously we found out about the error while she was still here. She would have wanted to fight it, had she have been here herself. So I almost feel this duty to do it on her behalf.
And the report made it clear that had she had a second opinion, there's a likelihood she would have survived, presumably, or at least had extended lifespan.
Yes.
Through earlier treatment, as with all cancers.
Yeah, I think from the report, it looks as if the chemotherapy and the surgery she had in April of 2022 would have been done 3 years prior.
Yeah.
Well, look, there'll be lots of people listening to you today, thinking hard about what you're saying, maybe in their own lives, taking that lesson on board. So on behalf of your mum, you're making a difference, so thank you.
No, thank you.
Thanks so much, Karen. British businesses from the storm of US tariffs announcing relaxed environmental rules for car makers. And
Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander joins us now. Good morning, thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Ed.
Our correspondent Richard Gaisford up at Jaguar has been reporting on the rather lukewarm reaction this morning from the car manufacturers to your announcements today. These changes on kind of green vehicle timetables were something that you were consulting on since Christmas, widely expected. And with the car industry facing 25% tariffs right now, these small changes are going to have very little impact upon companies like Jaguar, who've actually stopped exports to America. I mean, is this all you can do?
So Jaguar Land Rover have welcomed the announcement that we are making today, as has the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders. We're restoring certainty to the British car industry here. We know that under the last government there was constant chopping and changing. Rishi Sunak had to U-turn on his own policy, so we're being clear that that manifesto commitment that we made to 2030 phase-out date for the sale of new petrol and diesel vehicles stands. But we're also saying that through to 2035, people will still be able to buy full hybrids. So that's cars like the Toyota Prius and the Nissan e-Power, and they'll also be able to buy plug-in hybrids. We're also giving more flexibility to car manufacturers about how they meet those targets on the trajectory through to 2030. So increased flexibilities for them, and we're reducing the fines that if they don't meet the targets, they will have to pay less, but we have committed to reinvesting that money in supporting the transition to electric vehicles.
But I think you just made my point. The main thing you're announcing is you're not going to back down on the 2030 target. You're making some small changes about what will happen after 2030, but this will be small beer and already expected compared to a huge rise in tariffs right now for these car manufacturers. The starting manufacturers say that more needs to be done. Is this really it?
So this is part of a package of measures that we are taking to support the car industry. At the budget last year, we announced a £2 billion automotive transformation fund to invest in things like battery gigafactories, support the supply chain, support manufacturers themselves. We're also investing £200 million in the rollout of charge point infrastructure, supported by £6 billion of private investment in getting those charge points in place so that when people are thinking about buying a new car, they can be confident that the charging infrastructure is there. We've got the plug-in vehicle grant as well. So if there's somebody considering a new van purchase, for example, they can get up to £5,000 off a new electric van. So we're not pretending that what we're announcing today is a silver bullet, but it is a part of the puzzle. We do need to go further. We do need to go faster because, as the Prime Minister has said this weekend, we have entered a new global era when it comes to trade, and we need to do absolutely everything we can to be sheltering British businesses and British consumers from that. We've also been clear that an escalating global trade war is in nobody's best interests. That would be bad for global demand, prices, and for consumers ultimately. And so that's why we're being clear about the action that we're taking to support the car industry today.
This morning, on this programme, Sarah Davey, leader of the Liberal Democrats, Kevin Maguire from the Mirror newspaper, have been saying, look, you need to be going harder. If you're going to face up to what many people are calling the bullying tactics, then you need to be aligning a bit more with the EU, being a bit stronger. And at the moment, our response looks weak, doesn't it?
So standing up for British industry is about finding solutions, and escalating global trade war where tariffs are ratcheted up is in nobody's best interest, because that is bad for global demand, it's bad for prices, and it will be bad for consumers. So what was announced last week, whilst there are 25% tariffs on global car imports into the US, there are 10% tariff for other UK exporters to the US. Now, we're working through negotiations with counterparts in the US on a wider economic trade deal. This is about being cool-headed and pragmatic so that we can get the very best deal for British businesses and protect the interests of British consumers.
So how long do you expect the markets to wait?
So, look, this is a volatile time, and what I'm not going to do as a government minister is respond on a minute-by-minute basis. What we are clear as a government that we're doing is that we will be bringing forward our modern industrial strategy to support key sectors. The Business Secretary last week has also started a consultation with different sectors of the economy to get feedback to inform any future steps that we might take. We haven't ruled anything out. We haven't jumped to a position, as some other countries have, of applying retaliatory tariffs immediately.
But what it does seem, I think to some people, will be, look, if on the one hand Sir Keir Starmer is saying the world as we know it has gone, old assumptions can no longer be taken for granted, that this is a new era, globalisation hasn't worked. I mean, it feels like on the one hand, that's what he's assessing. And on the other hand, the action seems to be lukewarm, quiet, and sort of not making very much noise. How can those two things work in tandem?
So we are committed to having an active industrial strategy, and that is what the Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, and the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, are working very hard on. I do think today is a significant moment for the automotive industry. For years, they've been crying out for leadership and certainty. We are providing that certainty to them. Many of them have been working...
I think they would say that the significant thing happening this week, as well as 25% tariffs, is then being clobbered with a huge rise in employers' national insurance. And compared to that, small changes on environmental timetables will make no difference. And if you aren't going to do anything about the tariffs, why don't you say, we'll postpone the rise in national insurance for 6 months and give them a bit of relief now?
There's a simple answer to that, Ed, which is the rise in national insurance enables us to invest in the NHS. At the election, we were elected on a manifesto of investing in public services and getting those hospital waiting lists down. There is a direct relationship between the national insurance contributions that businesses are paying and the £26 billion worth that is going into the NHS. And we've seen waiting lists in hospitals fall for 5 months in a row now. We do realise that we are asking a lot of businesses at the moment, but we also made changes to protect some of the smallest businesses. So 43% of employers won't be paying national insurance employee contributions this year. But if you're going to invest in the NHS, if you're going to be rolling out free breakfast clubs at primary schools, which is really important for kids so that they start their school day well, then actually the money has to come from somewhere. And to be honest, the Conservatives, saying that they want the investment, but they don't want to say where the money is coming from.
But maybe that's why the business reaction is lukewarm, because in the end, you're telling business, even though the world has changed, and even though we're in a tariff war, in order to pay for the NHS and breakfast clubs, business is going to pay loads more national insurance, and you're just going to have to lump it. And they might be saying, well, hang on a sec, if the world is changing, why are you just sticking to plan A?
So the businesses that I speak to in my constituency in Swindon, many of them have said to me that they do understand that they need a healthy workforce, and that if you've got over 7 million people stuck on an NHS waiting list, that is not going to help get the people that they need back into work and retain a skilled workforce. And so, difficult decisions have had to be taken, but it is right that we invest in public services, and that was a manifesto we stood on at the last election.
Heidi Alexander, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you very much.
Britain.
Thank you.
Back with us, GB News presenter, the Mail's Andrew Pearce and the Mirror's Kevin Maguire. We were just listening to the Minister Heidi Alexander, the Transport Secretary, talking about what Keir Starmer is going to say today. Is this going to be enough? Is this going to satisfy kind of industry and the public, or is the government going to have to do more?
Jaguar Land Rover already suspended sales to America because of the 25% tariff. So fiddling around with dates to do with when we have to convert to electric cars, whether it's 2030, make very little difference whatsoever. But I think the point that was the killer point for me, Ed, was when you put to her, why not suspend the hike in national insurance rates? Massive effect on all companies, particularly car companies, and they're not doing it. Well, so it's a double whammy. It's a double whammy.
Let's remember...
That tax hike is coming in this week of all weeks, when we're seeing the stock market in freefall, the world's in turmoil over Trump's tariffs, and we're whacking employers who employ people. Reports in the papers today that they're laying off people every day. Terrible combination.
Actually, you see unemployment, the Office for Budget Responsibility, it'll go up this year by 100,000. I think it's from 1.5 million, then it'll fall again next year. So, but if I'm one of the 100,000 loses my job, I'll be really cheesed off against the economy. But it goes down again. But Jaguar Land Rover has always been, like most of the car companies, very good at shaking down the taxpayer, and they're getting £500 million of taxpayers' money to build a battery plant in Somerset. So there's two sides to the balance sheet. But of course, no. I mean, changing the green drive was going to happen anyway. The consultation had started. You'd said it. They've just brought forward the announcement. The truth is, if you get 25% tariffs whacked on by the US, where a large number of your cars go, it's very, very difficult. And I'm not sure quite what could be done. You could cut the price of cars. it's sold in Britain, try and get sales here, although those manufactured and waiting to go, they'll all be left-hand drive, not right-hand drive.
Postponing the national insurance rise, they're not going to do that, are they?
Well, no, because it would mean you'd be then jeopardising the NHS and the progress on that. It's when you're in government, you've got to make hard choices.
On the richest billionaires. I mean, they just keep fudging that and they just won't do it.
We've got a non-dom tax and there's reports that non-doms are fleeing the country and taking their money elsewhere.
You can't take it all, though, because it's here. A lot of it is in land.
Yeah.
You could do that. Capital gains tax is still lower than income tax. I've never understood why that should be.
Always tax them more.
Now, look, earlier this morning...
you want spending.
Yeah, earlier this morning we were talking about the possible return, weren't we, with Richard Arnold, about the fan favourite Benidorm here on ITV. But actually, in the real world, do residents of Spain actually want real-life Brits returning there this summer?
Well, not according to today's Mirror front page, which says there's a summer of discontent coming, with British tourists facing a wave of protests. And James Palomera from the Barcelona Urban Research Institute has said to us this morning that the anger in Spain is not going to go away.
Probably gonna be more and more anger because the price of housing is going up and because a lot of the housing is being converted into Airbnbs, like, you know, touristic short-term rentals.
So the thing is, like, if you'll go, it's the Easter holidays, you know, boycott American things and don't go to Spain. I mean, talk about a culture change for British people. What's going on over there?
Look, British tourism is one of the biggest income generators for the entire Spanish economy. They repel British tourists at their peril.
I think there's 18 million Brits go to Spain. I've got holidays booked to Spain myself, but you could see the tension between those who make a lot of money out of tourism and those who live in an area and are priced and crowded out. We get the same in Cornwall or the Lake District here. I mean, in Cornwall, Labour and Lib Dem MPs are saying bring in a new law so people can't just Airbnb their houses. I get why they're concerned in Spain, why people are angry, why people might protest, but don't take it out on people who've, you know, booked 2 weeks in holiday legally and in good faith.
And if you consulted the restaurants and the hotels and young people working in them and wider people who rely upon jobs, I'm not sure they'd be saying stop tourism, whether that's in Cumbria or Cornwall or in Spain.
No, absolutely.
I think that's absolutely right. But you can see the tension why it's there. And look, they've got a socialist government in Spain. Maybe it needs to intervene. And where public services are poor, or there's a problem with rents, or not enough accommodation, sort it out for the locals.
Those issues here, immigration is blamed for that. Not, you know, we talk about that. It's just fascinating to me that over there it's actually tourism, which seems...
We've bought up a lot of the houses, but it's the Airbnb now. That's the problem,
Look,
which ordinarily could have been for local people.
Yeah, but the restaurants and the accommodation is often not owned by people living in the area.
Right.
You'll get Madrid fat cats, Castilian fat cats who'll own it all.
If they quick counter argument though, the weather has been warmer in England than it has been in Portugal and Spain and southern France over the last week, and we know from Alex it's going to continue, so maybe the thing to do, go and have your holiday in Cornwall or Cumbria.
Very nice. Cornwall, very crowded. It's very crowded.
Yeah, the thing is, you do wonder.
You can do that, but look, people like to go abroad, and you look forward to it.
Yeah, getting on a plane is what you remember.
You're either forward to that airport, being stuck at the airport for hours on end, and the plane being late both ends. That's what we really look forward to. It's true. Drives you nuts.
But you wonder, if people actually did heed the Spaniard protesters' advice and went somewhere else, they'd be what would happen to their local economies?
Spain's economy would collapse.
It would, wouldn't it? Without British tourism in particular.
It would collapse.
Yeah, French, German, whoever goes to Spain.
And we cohabit there very nicely most of the time.
I think what it would do to exports of Watney's Red Barrel. I mean...
that was a beer, by the way, back in the day.
About 30, 40 years ago.
Could you just say, like, London gin or something for him? You'll get that a bit better.
What's the nice local brew they make there in Spain?
Where?
Cerveza.
Yeah.
That's a beer. What, are you thinking, Istria? Mahou? Cruz Campo? Which one are you having?
Right.
I just see him with a big poncho and a sombrero.
I like Spain very much.
Now, we had a little tease earlier from our musicians over there,
brilliant
didn't we?
tease.
Which might have bamboozled you if you did not see the pictures at the end of last week. So on Friday, actually happened on Thursday night, but on Friday we saw the King was pictured playing a rather unusual musical instrument during a reception at Windsor Castle. It was all to celebrate grassroots musical community groups. Now, Charles played, we might be able to hear it here, played Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And that is on a carrot recorder. This is all while meeting members of the London's Vegetable Orchestra, who many of us have never heard of, but now we all have. They're a group, good morning to you, of professional musicians who want to raise money to help community music across the UK. Good morning to Patrick, Rosanna and Benny. What a coup to have the King.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Playing a carrot.
Were you nervous carving out the carrot the night before for the King?
Well, we thought we might get a chance to get him to play one, so we had one spare anyway, just in case. They said it may not happen. So, yeah, we got prepped everything, and fortunately, he was really up for it. So.
And are you actually making the music on the vegetables?
Yeah.
You're actually doing it. That is amazing.
Yeah. Where did all this begin? Because it began... you professional musicians, Royal Academy of Music.
Well,
why?
You'd have to be. How could you play a potato if you weren't?
Well, you're going to find out in a minute. Go on, yeah.
So it started for an advertising campaign about 15 years ago, and they said, can you play music on on vegetables? And Tim Crammell, who makes the recorders, he said, well, we'll give it a go. And he gave it a go and recruited some students in.
And we are going to give it a go now.
Yep.
Ranveer,
fantastic.
Grab your pepper.
No, it can be quite expensive to buy musical instruments, so this is a good way to get started, isn't it? Right, OK, what are we doing here?
We are back tomorrow. And it's going to be Christine on the Rain in a moment. But first of all, London's Vegetable Orchestra with their version of When the Saints Go Marching In, with me and Ranveer playing along. Go, guys.